Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on the IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. I'm your host, Roman. We have a good show planned for you today. Please do not forget to stay tuned to IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station for Warriors Talk with Rochelle at 6 p.m. Tonight, my guest is the Alderman of the 17th Ward. Also, he is the candidate for Secretary of State. Please give a Drive at 5 welcome back to the one and only, the Honorable Alderman David Moore. Welcome back to the Drive, sir.
It's good to see you again. How you doing?
How you doing? I'm doing fine. So please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station an update since the last time you was on the Drive.
Absolutely. The last time I was on the drive, if I recall, there was about 5 people in the race for Secretary of State, and since then, it's down to 3 people, and one person that they threw in a race that's not really running. But you know how Chicago politics is: you put somebody in a race with the last name of a person to try to take votes from them, and that's what's happening in this race. And we could talk about that a little bit more later. But since then, um, everybody was what we would call an announced candidate. That means anybody could have said they were running for Secretary of State and just started running and talking to people. No one was an official candidate because um, we had to turn in petitions, and petitions were due in January. Oh, well, we couldn't even start petitions until January, and so we all across the state we needed 3,250 signatures to get on the ballot. We collected over close to 6,000 signatures that we turned in, not just from the 17th ward like people would think, not from just Chicago like people would think, and not just from Cook County like people would think, but from Illinois, from Cook County, from St. Clair County down there by East St. Louis, from Peoria County in Peoria, Illinois, from Decatur, from Danville. We had people circulating all over for us. And unlike our opponents, we didn't even have to pay people. These people who just believe in good government. And our petitions were clean and good, and we made the ballot. So I just want to thank everybody who circulated petitions for us. Thank everybody who signed our petitions for getting us on the ballot, because this is the people's seat.
What is your platform for Secretary of State?
Absolutely. So I tell people I see this Secretary of State in 3 buckets: the service of the Secretary of State, the business of the Secretary of State, and the responsibility of the Secretary of State. First of all, the service. It's important that this seat remain a servant seat and not go back to being a political seat like it once was under the previous administration, not the current one, but the previous one. And what I vowed to do, just like this Secretary of State who came out of Cabrini, I came out of Robert Taylor, who wasn't endorsed by the party. I'm not endorsed by the party, but vowed to, I am not seeking to run for higher office. I'm not using this as a stepping stone like my other candidates for governor or for senator, just like the other candidates. I'm looking at to serve. So number one, be a servant and serve all the residents of Illinois. 2, from the making sure that this seat is transparent in all departments. We talked about this last time. Most people know as driver services for the Secretary of State, but there are 20 different departments within the Secretary of State's office. And I want to make sure there's transparency in every office, and make sure that we're contracting, that we have equity in contracting, equity in hiring, and equity in providing those services. And then from the business of the Secretary of State, I'm the only one in this race that's going to said I'm offering discount to seniors when I get in the Secretary of State's office. Right now, they give discounts to veterans, give discounts to people with disabilities, as they should. But I'm the only one in this race that said I'm going to offer discounts to seniors. And
In what way, sir?
in what way? Looking in there, in terms of percentage or dollar amount, you have to look at that when you get in the Secretary of State's office. But bottom line, anybody that's 65 years old will get a discount, whether that's $5, $10, whatever it is. I have to assess that when I get into the Secretary of State's office and look at the budget, seeing what the revenues are and how we can do that. And I'm confident we can do it, because another thing I propose in generating new revenue is the digital license plates as an option. It's a cost savings of over $250 over a 5-year period. We talked about that last time I was here. But even more is more important now with all these carjackings that's going up, because digital license plates can show when your car is stolen, it can flash stolen. And so a lot of it's this being done in California, Arizona, and Michigan, and you can catch people while they're in the car, but more or less deter people from even carjacking you because they'll be more apt to get caught versus now they're not getting caught. What they have now they call license plate readers. Well, with a license plate reader, it reads the license plates, but it's reading the license plates of a stolen car. So who is it going back to? The person that the car was stolen from, not the person who stole the car. And so that's from the business of the Secretary of State. And then the responsibility, the most key part to me is making sure that we protect access to the ballot, making sure that I propose that right now 16-year-olds cannot register to vote when they get their driver's license. So what I'm proposing is that and when they turn 18, that they get a birthday card from me saying that they're automatically registered to vote and give them an opt-out option instead of opt-in to get more young people on the voting roll. And third, I was the first one in this race to talk about opening up 122 youth engagement offices at every driving facility throughout this state, giving our youth and young adults full internships all year round, doing that through a public-private partnership with businesses, where the businesses are paying for it, not the taxpayers, and we're giving our young people internships all year round.
What separates you from the other candidates that are running for Secretary of State? You have, like you said, it was five. It was an open door type of thing. Now
Absolutely.
it has narrowed. What separates you from from your opponents?
And I wish everybody would ask that question. One thing, when you go for a job, what do you have to present? Your resume. You have to present your resume. And putting my resume side by side with both of my opponents, my resume far outweighs theirs. It outweighs theirs every day of the week. I spent 10 years. I had a dual degree in accounting and operations management. When I went to school, I earned it. I didn't get a legislative scholarship because I had connections where people who know the elected official or giving donations to the elected officials, or their parents know them, get this 4-year scholarship. God bless them. But I had to work. I had to work a work study program. I had to be an RA. But the thing is, I had to interview for jobs. I got those jobs. I didn't get appointed to positions. I didn't just get grabbed and put in. I earned it. I am battle tested. I spent 10 years in the private sector as an accountant and operations management before coming into the public sector, working as an accountant at the Department of Aviation, and having worked at the Chicago Housing Authority as a development manager, and then as a senior advisor for operations with the Board of Review, helping people with their tax appeals, then running for alderman, not getting appointed to a seat, or having, having my family own a business and then they're just putting me in a position. That's what separates me. I am the people of Illinois. I am battle tested. And that is the main thing that separates me from my opponents. The other main thing is ethical. You got to have ethics and character. Both my opponents, as you're looking at their history and their record, both of them are dealing with ethical issues right now. And at the Secretary of State's office, ethics is key, and especially when we're talking about certifying lobbyists and making sure that registering lobbyists and tracking for them for ethics. We have to be ethical. Both of my opponents have ethical issues, and it's important that that seat, as I told you already, remain a servant seat and not a political seat. And that's what clearly
Okay,
separates
what
me.
are those ethical issues? You mentioned it.
Yes.
I mean, why not put it out in the open? You mentioned your opponents have ethical issues. What are the
Right.
ethical
So,
issues?
one of my opponents ran for Senator Barack Obama's Senate seat at the pinnacle of his career. And one of those things that came out is the failure and involvement of the failure of not only their family bank and his involvement in that, but also of Bright Star, which was a college savings program, and how that was mismanaged at the state level under his leadership. And so that's an issue that if they were to win a primary, that the other party is going to bring out against them to beat them like they did last time when they ran for Barack Obama's Senate seat. Our other candidate is things every week. Something is coming out. First of all, we have to fill out ethics reports. Well, we have to fill out through our financial statements and our ethics reports. We had to put information out there what our spouses make, who they're involved with, especially if they're involved in doing any lobbying or any business with the state or anything like that. One of my opponents failed to put that on their report. When asked about it, they said it. She said it was an oversight. Well, she also failed. What the news brought out that you failed to do it 2 years while you were in your city clerk position. So is it an oversight for three years, or is it something that you're trying to hide, or is it incompetency? So it's one of the other. Then a report came out that she did something for her husband to help him get used her position to help his business, his lobbying business, get contracts. And right now it's under investigation in New Orleans. They've actually asking to subpoena the records. So you can't be under a cloud of investigation and then talk about running for an office where ethics is important.
So if all this information is true, why nobody's not challenging her to be on the ballot?
No, well, you don't have, well, you make the ballot. You make the ballot. There's the ethical issue is not a requirement for the ballot. An ethical issue. If I'm out there stealing, I can sign petitions, and if I get enough signatures and I turn in, my statement of candidacy, I turn in all the paperwork, I can make the ballot. But if I'm out there stealing, it doesn't say David can't steal to be on the ballot. But that becomes a character and the ethical issue that the people have to decide, is this someone we want to put in office with a cloud over their head?
But it seems like to me that,
and it's been on the news.
Well, a little trinkets more than a bucket.
More than a bucket, as it should be. And that's why we talk about even our news medias making sure that information is out there. But we know some new corporations own news medias, and they decide sometimes what content goes out.
Why you think Secretary of State Jesse White did not support you in your candidacy as you were seeking for his support? Last time you was here,
Absolutely.
You were hoping that he will endorse you because you have conversations with him. And, I don't know what happened, but now we're here.
Absolutely.
So tell us about why you think Secretary of State did not support you in your candidacy for Secretary of State.
So back in 1997, when Secretary of State first ran, I'm the only one in this race that circulated petitions for him to get elected. He wasn't endorsed by the party, and I did it. And I wasn't even an elected official. It was just I was involved in serving, and I wanted someone in there who had a servant's heart, because I didn't want that seat to go back to anybody that was mired in scandal and corruption. It would have been nice to get his support, but bottom line, he has a friendship with J.B. Pritzker, and they have a close relationship. You would have to ask him directly his reasoning behind that. When he announced that he was supporting that person, he said, this office needs somebody who's capable, which I am. My resume showed it. He said, this office needs somebody who has an ethical and character background. I am. That person isn't. And so you have to ask him why. And people have relationships, and I understand that. And his relationship with Governor Pritzker and with Durbin are close. And she came out of Durbin camp. She worked with Rahm Emanuel. They had her go, when she got here to Chicago, had her join Secretary White's organization. She's a part of his organization. And so I can speculate on many things, but the true answer is for him to answer that question.
Are you disappointed regarding his support for the opponent?
I think more people in Chicago are disappointed. As an African,
why you think Chicagoans are disappointed?
And I'm going to tell you that by telling you a story right now. That to answer that question, as an alderman, I go out and I talk to guys on the street trying to get them to change their lives, give them jobs. And this one of the young men, well, he's actually a little older than I am, actually. Well, close. He's in his 40s. And he said, David, you drank the Kool-Aid. I said, what you mean by that? He said, you did everything all of them told you to do. You did the right thing. You stayed in school. You didn't get out here and sell drugs with us. You went to church. You graduated from high school. You went to college. You graduated. He said, when you ran for alderman, none of them was with you. He said, you got no endorsements. As a matter of fact, they was battling to keep you out. You ran against the establishment, but we were out here for you in the community. We signed petitions for you. We helped you get elected. And they said, since 1997, you've been telling us to support an individual. And now you're running, they're not even behind you. They said, if you're supposed to be the best of us, you're supposed to be the best of us, and they're not even helping you. He said, I don't even have a snowball's chance in hell. That's why they're more angrier than I am. When I tell you what I told you here when I was here before, that there's two people I keep my eyes on. Anybody saying they want to be a preacher and anybody saying they want to be an elected official. Because it's not something you run to, it's something you run from. It's a calling on your life. This is a calling. God has opened doors for me that can't nobody shut, and he's closing doors that can't nobody open. And so when I don't put my stock in man, that's why I'm not disappointed. I put my stock in God. And so we're going to win this race. Doors are opening like never before. And so I think, it's disheartening, but I'm not disappointed.
Do you wish he should have supported a black candidate?
I think he should have supported a candidate with the best qualifications on this ticket that would help the least of us and have a proven track record for helping the least of us and have a servant's heart. I think that's who he should have supported. And I am the only one in this race that fits that criteria.
Recently, you have talked to Jesse White. You shared it on your Facebook page. I know sometimes you're not able to talk about private conversation, but can you share with us some of the details of the nature of that conversation?
Well, Secretary White, I've had several conversations. I support many of the organizations that he support. The Warri Karate Club. Of course, I always supported the Jesse White tumbling team. And so when we're at different events, we sit and talk. And I will share this because he said this publicly, and he'll say, "You're the man." He would say things like, "I'm very supportive of you." And those things, and so because a person don't endorse you does
But
not
don't you
don't
think, I mean, there was times that he was on this show and he would say, I'm the man.
Mhm.
Don't you think that's kind of like his nature to say he's the man? I recall him saying to Earl, he's the man.
Right.
So could that be in general?
Well, again, you would have to ask him. I think when I've spoken to him in the past, even before, way before I decided to run, when he would come out to the 17th Ward or anything, he would always commend me. I love the way you have your independent voice. I love the way you're standing up for the community and city council. Keep doing what you're doing. He had always been encouraging of me and supportive of me, and it was interesting because one of the last conversations and events we were at was at the Chicago Music Awards, and we were sitting there with Art Norman, and there, right there, Art Norman was like, "Oh, you're running for Secretary of State? I heard. Hey, has he given you his endorsement?" And so, before I can clearly answer, Secretary White said, "He's family. He's a good man. I'm always supportive of him," and that was his answer to Art
As
Norman.
Secretary of State, are you willing to keep the organ donor program? That's part of his legacy. Are you willing to state right now on Intellectual Radio, if you get elected as Secretary of State, would you keep that program?
That's a great question. People ask me, they say, "Oh, Secretary of State white shoes are going to be hard to be filled. You can't. Those going to be some tough shoes to fill." I told people, I'm not trying to fill his shoes. I'm standing on his shoulders, just like I'm standing on the shoulders of Harold Washington. So I have to do better because I can look further and I can see higher when I'm standing on their shoulders. And because of that, not only would I continue it, I'll even improve it and enhance it. And so one of the things we talk about, most people in our communities know about organ donation more or less after the fact, after death. I'm even now and have been talking about and working with Gift of Hope and other organizations talking about even living donation. We got so many dialysis centers in our communities. And when I think about Eddie Johnson, Superintendent Eddie Johnson, being able to have a second chance at life because his son donated, living donor. When I think about Harold Baines, it just came up, him being able to have a second chance at life, getting a heart and lung transplant. All of those things matter. So we have to remove those stigmas out of our community. So I am a big advocate already, and I'm not in the office, and I'm going to continue to be an advocate of organ donation.
Job security is another issue. Again, I asked you this question last time you was here. I will ask it again. Will you keep some of, and that's the biggest issue. They've been in jobs for years. They're worried if their position would be, their fear their job may be lost under your opponents. But now they're saying, is there a way to keep their jobs, period, because of the economy, what's going on, the inflation? Would you say here right now, will they keep will you keep majority of their staff?
Let me tell you, when I tell you I worked in corporate America for 10 years, these are the issues as the head cost accountant that I had to deal with. And what you deal with, the last thing you look at is just disrupting people's lives and firing people. What did I say? There are 4,000 jobs within the Secretary of State's office, but your primary responsibility is always to the taxpayers. But you also don't want to just go in and land off people. You have to find out, are people in the right places? 4,000 jobs. Do we have a position in the library if you're not in the right place? Do we have a position at the Office of Business Services? Do we have positions in the Capitol buildings, in the Capitol office? We have to look at all departments, making sure that people in the right place, doing the right jobs, so that we're making sure that we're doing the best for our taxpayers. It's not about coming in there and laying off of people. It's making sure that people are in the right place. I also talked about bringing some of these quick services like renewing your license and renewing your driver's license. I'm the first one in this race to say that, using our libraries as a satellite office. So you can begin to shift people closer even to home, and providing those services. So it's rethinking and making sure that we have the right people in the right places, providing the best service at the best price to our constituents, where we're not raising fees.
Under your jurisdiction, you have access of the
Yes.
libraries, as Secretary of State.
The state librarian. Yes.
Right. Right now, in Black neighborhoods, the libraries are piss poor, books outdated. And you go to other neighborhoods. I'm just going to name the West Side.
Mhm.
You go to Austin. Their tissue is under lock and key. Their commodes, it's like it hasn't been cleaned in years. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, it's piss poor. As Secretary of State, why we're not having a state-of-the-art library like they do in Oak Park, like they do in these suburbs, like they do. We pay our fair share of taxes as well. Why in the hell our libraries are looking like that?
And I want to go look at those, because when I look at the libraries on like Whitney Young Library, which I just visited, as well as Thurgood Marshall Library, which is in my ward, which was pretty new back in 2000, but now needs an update. And Whitney Young Library just got an update. I was just up there doing National Reading Month with some young people, and they're doing media. They're doing VR technology on a small scale, and that's what I want to bring to a larger scale. So making sure that we're getting those grant funds to help the city enhance their resources. The city has a budget for their library, so they
But
have.
it's not going to the right hands. It's not, and I'm just being
No,
real
I
with
get
you.
what you're saying.
It is because it doesn't make no sense. You go into a library to use a bathroom, and you got to ask a clerk for a key to unlock to get some tissue.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, and that's something we have to address. Which again, it's not happening in my ward. So whoever ward is that, that alderman should be addressing that during budget season. Right now, you don't have to wait till I become Secretary of State, but I'll find it and I can push that alderman because they don't like to play in each other's backyards. But as Secretary of State, I will make sure that those library have grant funds to have increased resources. Now, what's critical to me as I talk about bringing VR technology, making libraries more like a community space for our families and for our children, that's where I can add value as the Secretary of State.
Last question on the library issue. Will there be like a state-of-the-art libraries in Black neighborhoods like they are in the suburban Cook County areas?
The answer to that on my watch, I will definitely advocate for that and push for that. I just helped do a groundbreaking in Galesburg, Illinois, on a state-of-the-art library. Just was crazy in Galesburg. It is so historical that everybody came out for it. It's going to transcend the way Galesburg look. And I was happy to be a part of that library. So to your point, and I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook page, that's what I want our communities to have. So just to directly answer your question, under my watch, yes, I'm going to make sure that I'm advocating that we're putting those resources in our communities to have those state-of-the-art libraries.
Recently, you have been supported by the IFP dash IPO union.
IVI-IPO.
Yeah, thank
Independent
you.
Voters of Illinois,
Right.
Independent Precinct
Do
Organizations.
you feel that more and more people are leaning your way towards your candidacy? Because at first, you can buy a union support. Now you're getting some support. Tell us about that.
Yes. So, and this is why I've stayed in this race. And I'm telling you, I can't lie. It's been tough. It's been heavy, but you fight for the people, not for yourself. If we have to rely on our children being a millionaire, we won't see the next Barack Obama. We won't see the next Carol Mosley Braun. We just won't see those next people who come from grassroots because you have to be a millionaire or you have to sell out through major endorsements. And when they endorse you, you have to be there for them and say and push and help push their agenda, but instead of being there for the community. And so what people are starting to see now, they're starting to wake up and see, wait, look at these resumes. This person has been given everything. You cannot be born on third base or be placed on third base and say you hit a home run. When our kids are here who's practicing every day, who's trying every day, studying, and have to go through interviews like I had to do myself. And so people are beginning to look at that and see that. But more importantly, guess what they're looking at? These are some flawed candidates with some serious ethical issues. And here's a candidate that has none, has been a credible person, working with the community, just focusing on serving the community. And that's why we're beginning to get that support. And you're going to be hearing more in the coming days.
People are counting you out as Secretary of State. Polls are not in your favor, and people are taunting your record as alderman. What do you have to say to those people that is currently counting you out of Secretary of State and taunting your record?
I want those people to, first of all, stop lying because I want somebody to show me a poll that said this race isn't neck and neck. The last poll I saw was 13, 13, and 12, with the most heavy populated people being undecided. This is a very tight race. If somewhere someone can show me a poll that I'm not in this race, I want to see it. And I want to see who conducted that poll.
People are frustrated regarding the carjacking, and it's up at an all-time high, and it's a nationwide problem. Even though it is not your jurisdiction, however, you can recommend, as Secretary of State, how are you going to curb the ongoing carjacking problem?
Absolutely. Just because I was pushing this as a candidate, the legislation is now in a position and talking about passing or putting out digital license plates as an option. I was the first one in this race to talk about it because, again, California, Arizona, Michigan are doing it, and it's going to eventually happen in Illinois. When your car is carjacked, you can get to a phone or make a call and immediately say your car is stolen, and it's going to flash stolen on it. So, but right now, carjackers are not getting caught in the car. So guess what? They're not prosecuted. Even if somebody say that person took it, but they say, well, he had on a mask. Can you identify him? No, he had on a mask. He had on a hoodie. And the judge is letting them go because they're not being caught in the vehicles. This allows the carjackers to be caught in the vehicle. We can prosecute, but it's not even about just locking young men and women
But the
up. It's
prosecution,
about
and I'm sorry
this is what I'm this about to go.
but
It's about deterrence. And if somebody know that they have a better chance of getting caught, they're not going to carjack you.
but I get what you're saying, the court situation. There's the however component. The however component is they get slapped on the wrist. They're there until they start with the vehicular carjacking. So hijacking, I'm sorry. Under when you carjack someone, they call it a vehicular hijacking now as
Mhm.
to charge. Now there's increase, but it shouldn't have come to that. There's still a growing the younger there are people young as 5 years old committing these crimes now. And to attest to that, you can go on any media outlet. And there was a 5 year old in Crestwood that was involved in that. And a lot of people thought it was joking, but it turned out to be true.
Mhm.
What you say to that, and what would you recommend to the state's attorney, which is an African American, Cook County State's attorney, which is an African American woman? It to me, and this is the outside looking in. To me, you have a lot of African Americans in high profile places, and you look at the crime rate. You look at what's going on, and people can say this doesn't make no damn sense. You
So,
said it.
so here it is. As I've been pushing as an alderman, and I'm pushing the state legislature to do it. You hear me talk about what they're doing in LA, and that's the Family First initiative. You're not gonna, who wants a 5-year-old locked up? Come on. And so at the end of the day, it's making sure those wraparound services are there. We need a real Family First initiative that's looking at that and providing those safety nets for the entire family, not just that one situation. What's going on that a 5-year-old is out there carjacking? And so when you look at that, you have to put those family wraparound service around to do prevention. And so until we do that, we're talking about not just carjacking, we're talking about the whole issue of what we're dealing with in crime. We have to be intentional about this. We have to be intentional about investing in our families. We have to be intentional about investing in our communities, because people forget short memories. 400 years of slavery, 150 years of reconstruction and recondition, another 40 plus 60, 40, about 45, 60 years of Jim Crowism, another 20, 30 years of redlining. Those things were intentional, and they were government sponsored. And so until we are intentional about undoing what we did all of those years, let's be real. We're gonna continue to have those problems.
Another growing problem, again, not under your jurisdiction, but you can recommend, and this is involved parked cars. There's this new thing on the internet regarding parked cars, and it's called car slashing. Let's say you park your car in front of your home, and overnight someone comes in and slash your tires. As Secretary of State, how are you going to curb up this problem before it gets out of hand?
Again, we're just as it's not even just the Secretary of State. It's again as alderman. It's identifying where these things are happening at, putting the proper resources in police. Right now in Chicago, those issues. Well, or I don't know what's going on in the south suburbs or anything like that. But it's no different from somebody coming in and taking your catalytic converters. What you're going to do? You're going to make sure you just have resources, and you try to identify and target where these things are happening. And as you know, criminals move around. You target one area, you're not going to be able to put a police car on every station. Again, it's just advocating for resources for our communities. We have to rebuild, and to do that, we have to be realistic. We're talking about casinos that's coming, and they're using that money for pensions and everything. we have to have a real economic engine in our state. And that real economic engine is what? A third airport. If people are not talking about doing a third airport in the state of Illinois, which has had bipartisan support over the years, that would be a real economic engine to change lives. And we have to do that.
Expressway shootings is at an all-time high in Chicago. Money cameras were sent. However, cameras are not being installed to assist the expressway shootings and getting these people caught. Currently, you sit as alderman. What is the latest development to your understanding regarding these cameras and why they have not been put up yet?
Okay, so it's from the expressway shootings is a state jurisdiction, so I'll talk about that from the state level.
Okay.
It's not city level, although we try to work together comprehensively. So this is why I talked
Well, the
about
reason I put the city issue is because reports have said that the mayor was holding it,
was holding what.
the funding of why the cameras were not put. The state has already issued the funds to the city.
This is a state road, so I have to look in that. I have not heard that because it's a state road, so I don't see why the funding would even have to come to the mayor when you're talking about the Dan Ryan, the Eisenhower, which comes through Maywood, has nothing to do with the mayor of the city of Chicago, and so therefore that's state money, and that's what I'm talking about. They put up cameras and they put up what they call license plate readers. They did put something out, and the reason why it's not stopping, and this is why digital license plates are so important. The license plate reader is reading the car that's doing the shooting. They steal cars, so when they read the license plate on the car, who's it going back to? Not the criminal. It's going back to the person that stole the car. And that's why digital license plates are so important, because before that person even commit the crime, it'll flash out that car is stolen, and somebody, whether it's a citizen can call it in, or the police can see it on the expressway and say, wait, that vehicle is stolen. Let us pull it over now.
State Patrol needs more manpower to curb the expressway shooting. Again, it's not your jurisdiction. However, you can recommend, as Secretary of State, what kind of recommendation would you would state or propose to increase state patrol?
Absolutely. Same thing we're doing in Chicago to try to increase people joining the police department. And let's bring it out into our communities and talk about not policing as much as more talking about someone being a servant. They're here to serve and protect. And so we have to invite our young people and the people who care about their communities to want to go into those areas of law enforcement. And so bringing them into setting it up where people can go into high school, start getting accreditation at junior colleges even before they get out of high school, so they can go right into those training jobs and get those good jobs as a state police or a Chicago policeman. We have to eliminate barriers that were put in place mainly through to racism, because you didn't want a lot of African Americans and the other minorities on the force. And so when we eliminate those barriers, we get more good people involved and more people applying to be a state police or a Chicago police officer.
How can you use your automatic influence to get city and state assistance if you're Secretary of State regarding problems on the roadways?
So one of the influences that I can use right now, the Secretary of State's office generates about $2 billion in revenue. Of that, 1.2 billion goes towards roads. And so because I am the Secretary of State, and that's the allocation that is done legislatively at the legislative body. But that's why you hear me talk about the service of the Secretary of State, the business of the Secretary of State, and the responsibility of the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State has a responsibility to have a voice, to speak up, even if it's challenging the governor, even if it's challenging the comptroller, the treasurer, or even the mayor. You can't go back and say, oh, that's my friend, or that's who helped me get elected and put my money up for me. I can't challenge them. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be that voice and that advocate that is fearless, that I am as an alderman, and that's the same way I'll be as Secretary of State.
All right. I'm going to pivot and ask you to take off your Secretary of State candidacy, and now put on your automatic hat on. There are some very important issues that's currently going on concerning the Black community. And since you are the current alderman, I would like to have your input on it. The first issue is regarding the Ward Remap. How concerned the Black community should be regarding the remapping situation if the Black caucus version get voted out?
First of all, let me be clear, and this is again when we talk about fake news, false media, and everything, and I tell people trust but verify. Do your homework. What sells is sexy is Black versus Latino. That stuff sells. We've never had a Black caucus map. Never had a Black caucus map. There was never one presented, never one created. And so there's never been a Black caucus map. There's been a rules committee map now, which is called the United Map, which means all aldermen who were trying to work together, and at least 33 of us went in the room and say, okay, let's look at our maps, how we want to make sure our wards are not drawn all over the place, but it's more compact, more square, and so that we'll be a representation of what the people should be. That's what 33 members went in there and did. There was another group of 15 members that went and drew the map for the whole entire city without input from the other aldermen, and definitely without input from the residents, and said, this is the map we want. That's not democracy. And so that's what you're faced with, a map that 15 people went and drawn and said, take it or leave it, or a united map where a coalition of aldermen of all races went in and said, this is what we want. And that's called the united map.
So why, and when you're saying fake news, this is what's on the news.
It's fake.
Latino,
because there was never a Black caucus
map. The
map.
Latino coalition is saying this is our map, and the Black community has their own version, and it's regarding one or two numbers versus, like last time you was here, it was kind of like a 15 to 16 type of situation. And that's what they're fighting about, because Hispanics want more control. What are you saying in regards to that?
I just had a young man that I'm mentoring who happens to be of Hispanic. He's Hispanic. He lives just on the other side of the railroad tracks in my ward. And we were talking about this in my car the other day. And his eyes just lit up as we got it. We have the 13th and the 14th ward right now that is predominantly Hispanic. Is there an Hispanic alderman in any of those wards? They can have 2 wards right now today, do they? And it's predominantly Hispanic. So take the wards that you can get now. Don't take wards from African American communities when you got 2 wards that you can take right now. And that's what I say to that. And so, again, let me be crystal clear on this. There's never been a Black caucus map. You'll never find one. Never presented. You had a united map of 33 aldermen of different races in the city council that came up and put up a map the fair way by working with one another, by talking to their constituents. And you have 15 other people that came and said, we just going to go in the back room and put a map together and force these other people, the other 33 to take it.
So let's say they decide to go with their version instead of yours. Again, what would you say to that? How would that get challenged?
Well, right now it's going to go into a referendum. It's not about so much of a challenge right now. It's if we don't get the total 41 votes, because you need at least 10 aldermen to go. Any 10 aldermen can take a map to a referendum. Right now we have 33 aldermen with a potential other 2 coming on. And so if we can get another 6 more to come on, then we can avoid a referendum. But it looks like it's at this point that it's going to go to a referendum. And when it goes to a referendum, we have to get the truth out there to the voters. The voters will look and see what a united map looks like that's better for their communities. And when we continue to get our message out there, the united map will prevail.
Should the Black community be concerned about Black leadership representing them in the future? Because you have a Hispanic running for mayor and Hispanics running for major city and state positions now. Should the Black community be concerned for a possible lack of Black leadership?
Well, what I think what the Black community should be concerned about is making sure that the voices there now are representing them. That's what they should be concerned
But some
about.
people say the
So,
voices
so,
now
so,
are
no,
too
go
wait.
ahead.
Voices now are too old ideas, and it's not really representing their community.
Well, I think if you look at the Chicago City Council, we got some young stars in there. Alderman Jeanette Taylor. You got myself. You got Alderman Sophia King. So you got some good voices and some young blood in there. So I think just like any church, you don't want a church with a whole bunch of young people, and you don't want a church with a whole bunch of old people. You need because a church with a whole bunch of old people is a dying church, and church with a whole bunch of young people have no wisdom. And so some of the senior people we got have provided wisdom and guidance to us young people that we've been able to navigate this council and work for our constituencies, and that's what we'll continue to do. But to your point, I represent a 20% Latino population. I definitely don't want them saying, "Hey, David is Black. We don't want him representing us." My thing is, we want people who represent the voices of the people and interests. And what you'll find out is a lot of our interests line up. And so my residents, they're like, wait, I don't want to lose my Latino residents, my Hispanic residents. David, we don't want to lose you. And so it's about who serves the community best. You're even dealing with that with one of the aldermen that's talking about mayor. You know who's his greatest support come from? The Black community, not even the Hispanic community. And so people are wanting people who's going to serve their interests, the people's interests, and not their self-interest. And that's why I'm also better for this seat as Secretary of State, because I'm not here to serve my self-interest.
We're almost running out of time, but I got to squeeze some questions in. First things first, the Haitian and African communities are wondering if the city of Chicago are opening the doors for Mexicans, Afghans, and Ukrainians. Why not for the Haitian and the Africans who have families here in Chicago? What are your thoughts on the immigration issue and why Haitian and Africans are not getting the same type of support like the other ethnicities?
Thank you so much. I just had a meeting with Dr. Iwa, who's the head of the African PAC and president of the African Coalition PAC. And as you know, I was the face and the voice of renaming Dusabu Drive, and I was able to do that with Martin International and a coalition of African the African diaspora, including people from Haiti, and many other of our countries that represent Africans, African Americans, or what we call Haitian Americans, and the whole diaspora, African diaspora. I just say that because they haven't had nobody have a voice for them in the council. And I started being that voice, and others going to continue to be that voice. That's the problem. That's the problem. And so we've had these conversations, and we're putting things together right now to make sure that their voices are heard, even with this department or of new Americans that the mayor has. What's in there for the African diaspora? I'm asking those questions right now, along
And I
with
can tell you now, nothing.
and along with no, and I'm telling you right now, nothing. And so I'm working with those communities right now. We just met last week, and I'm saying together, because I can scream all day long, but as long as any mayor got their 26 votes, my screaming means nothing. But when I got a body of people that's working together, that's not just mobilized, but organized, and guess what? They're organizing right now, and we're coming up with a complete plan to make sure that their voices are not only heard, but that they're getting those same resources.
The Black community are getting sick and tired of scraps from the city and elected officials saying, I'm fighting for you. The Black community wants to know how the city, the state, and local officials are fighting for them in our community looks like a hellhole. The reason I say that is because sometimes when you border city,
Mhm.
like let's say the Austin community, it's kind of like the cartoons. It's dark. You have pigeons, you have trash and everything. But you cross the old park, it's like the sky is open, you see the robins flying, you hear chirp chirp chirp, and it's a matter of crossing the street. Why is that? In Alderman's, and I'm not just saying you,
Mhm.
I'm saying they're saying they're fighting for you, and we don't see that.
I can only speak for Alderman David Moore. I just got one of the greatest compliments by a young lady by the name of Karen Hicks. They were doing the cleanup throughout the city of Chicago. She called me on the phone. She said, Alderman, you're just amazing. She said, I can't find any trash in your ward. We're trying to do a cleanup. That's because when I got in office, the focus I had on it, a clean community is a safe community, is a working community. You keep your community clean, it tends to be safe. When it's safe, you can bring economic development. That's what I've been doing in the 17th Ward. Crime is even down in the 17th Ward. Shootings, murders are down in the 17th Ward because of those efforts. Economic development is coming up. It's right now,
But
we're
when you,
groundbreaking
but
in the
I'm sorry to,
17th Ward. So when you're talking about our communities are not looking like this, I can't speak for the whole city. I can speak for the 17th Ward, but I also can speak for making sure that when we're doing developments in this ward, that Black contractors are on those jobs, that they're hiring Black people so that we can build Black wealth, so that people can have money to stay in their homes, take care of their communities. And at the same time, like I'm fighting for this roof and porch program, as we're dealing and battling with this, the mayor about to give out gas. I don't agree with that. I rather for the money to go towards the
why you
roof and
don't agree with that?
because I would rather for $12 million to go towards the roof and porch program to keep people in their communities. But as I'm talking to my residents, they telling me, David, this is what we want, roof and porch. But if we can't get it, let's get something. But hold the mayor to making sure that we get more money for these roof and porch programs. And that's what I'm going to do.
Very quickly, because we're running out of time. I do have a follow up. You do represent Inglewood, and my question, and the reason I cut you off, is because you hear almost every single day, crime is in Inglewood. Crime is in Inglewood, and I know you're trying. What is going
I
on?
represent part of Inglewood. There's
Yeah.
5 aldermen, 5 and a quarter aldermen, because Alderman Dow got a portion, small portion, probably 4 or 5 blocks. But anyway, just basically 5 aldermen represent Inglewood. And so and here's the go on the news. When I'm watching the news sometimes, there's something that can happen over in Park Manor. Guess what they call it? Inglewood. It's just again, it's
But as an
but I
alderman,
only can talk
but
about the crime that's down in my ward, which I have control over. And crime is down in the 17th Ward. And we got those stats from the police department last June.
But as alderman, can you call and say to the news director, "Hey, you're misrepresenting
We
that?
have,
That
we have, we have,
you have."
we have.
Okay.
And not just me, my other colleagues, as we talk about it, we have. You can't call more. You can't Park Manor, Inglewood. You can't go down to 47th Street, Canaryville, and call that Inglewood. It's a constant thing that they do. Just like they now still some stations call Lakeshore Drive Lakeshore Drive. It's DuSable Lakeshore Drive, and I've called that out as
Very,
well.
very quickly, I gotta squeeze 2 questions in, and then I promise I will let you go. Um, Grants for small Black businesses. Chicago, and I'm going to name this organization, Chicago Allies Community, received millions and millions of dollars to distribute funds for small Black businesses in dilapidated or let's say less developed areas. Unfortunately, the actual number of small Black businesses receiving these grants is less than 1%. You deal with economic development
Mhm.
and business grants that people have applied from the west side and the south side. I just want to know your opinion. How can a grant that's supposed to assist small Black businesses are not, and they're not getting these grants? Only a small fraction of it.
Again, I never purport to know everything. I will have to look. I'm not familiar with Chicago allies. I will tell you about the NOF grant
Mhm.
that we have at the city of Chicago, and that I work closely with. And I keep a list, and I deal with DPD, making sure that those businesses are getting. That's why we were able to put new shops in the Auburn Gresham area. That's why we were able to put a new business in. A new business and expanded one in Chicago Lawn community. And that was a Black business, even in Chicago Lawn. And so I only can talk about what Alderman David Moore has done to make sure those NOF grants that come to his
But the
community,
moral
that
of
the
the
people
story
are getting
is
them.
basically holding these organizations accountable for making sure.
Well, I
if-
work with Chatham Business Association in my community. I work through the Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation in my community, and I work with the Greater Southwest Development Corporation and Teamwork Inglewood. They all are making sure that those dollars are getting in the hands of Black people.
Okay, very quickly, please give intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station where they can get in contact with you, and anything you want to say. For the whole minute is yours. What you want to say? Okay.
First of all, as always, Roman, I appreciate you because you ask honest questions. And I tell people, never let up. Let elected officials hold them accountable. Stop electing people and then go away and sit down. Hold them accountable. And I appreciate you for doing that so much. I want to let people know that this Secretary of State seat is the critical seat in this race come June 28th. More so than the governor, more so than anyone. This Secretary of State seat is critical. Secretary Waite has held it for 22 years, and he's done a good job. People love Secretary White. I love him. But at the end of the day, we can enhance, we can do better. But it's more important that this Secretary of State seat not go back to being a political seat. If people want more for Illinois, they need to get more. And that's David Moore for Secretary of State. You can contact me at www.moreforillinois.com. You can call our office at 773-846-0289 and go on our website to donate or even to volunteer so that we can continue to get our message out and get our information out to the communities. And I thank you for this opportunity.
No problem. Anytime you want to come on, let us know. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, that's going to do it for us on the Drive at 5. Thanks to Earl Winfrey, our executive producer. Wonders behind the scenes, the one and only T.O. Hardeman will be here next week. Have a good one, everyone.